morning sun spilled across the red brick buildings of the University of California, Berkeley, painting the campus in gold. Students hurried along the tree-lined paths, backpacks slung over shoulders, earbuds in, coffee cups clutched like lifelines. It was a normal day, or at least it seemed that way. I was a sophomore then, majoring in political science, though I spent more time in the library's basement stacks than in lecture halls. My name is Daniel Reyes, and back then my biggest worry was whether I'd pass my midterms. The apocalypse was still just a word from movies and late-night debates. My roommate, Marcus, was already awake when I left the dorm. He was a computer science major, perpetually glued to his laptop. "Don't forget we've got intramurals tonight," he called as I grabbed my bag. Yeah, I said, waving him off. "If I survive Professor Klein's lecture first." The campus buzzed with life. Flyers for protests and concerts littered the bulletin boards. A group of students chanted outside Sproul Hall, demanding climate action. Skateboarders weaved between pedestrians. The air smelled of espresso and eucalyptus. In the dining hall, I met up with Lena, a biology major with a sharp wit and sharper eyes. She was already buried in her notes, a half-eaten bagel forgotten beside her. "You hear about that flu going around?" she asked without looking up. I shrugged. "There's always something going around." "This one's different," she said, finally meeting my gaze. "High fever, seizures, rapid onset. Hospitals in LA are swamped." I laughed it off. Sounds like finals week. But her expression didn't change. "I'm serious, Daniel. Something's wrong." I brushed it aside, but her words lingered as I walked to class. Professor Klein's lecture hall was packed. He was a wiry man with wild hair pacing the stage as he ranted about the collapse of empires. "Civilizations fall not from outside invasion," he declared, "but from within, when systems fail, when trust erodes, when fear takes root." The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe it was Lena's warning. Maybe just the way his voice echoed in the cavernous hall. Either way, I felt a chill. After class, I cut across the quad. A crowd had gathered around a student lying on the grass, his body convulsed, foam bubbling at his lips. Campus security pushed through, radios crackling. Someone shouted for an ambulance. I froze, my stomach twisting. The student's eyes snapped open. They were clouded, unfocused. He lunged at the nearest person, teeth snapping, screams erupted. Security wrestled him down, but not before blood sprayed across the grass. I stumbled back, heart pounding. By the time paramedics arrived, the student was restrained, thrashing against the gurney. They wheeled him away, leaving behind a shaken crowd. Lena found me minutes later, her face pale. "You saw it, didn't you?" I nodded, unable to speak. "That wasn't a seizure," she whispered. "That was something else." The rest of the day blurred. Rumors spread like wildfire. Students collapsing in dorms, professors cancelling classes, ambulances screaming through the streets. The administration sent out an email urging calm, calling it an isolated incident. But no one believed it. That night, Marcus and I sat in our dorm, the glow of his laptop casting shadows on the walls. News reports filled the screen. Outbreaks in Los Angeles, San Diego, even San Francisco. Hospitals overwhelmed. Police struggling to contain riots. "This isn't just the flu," Marcus muttered. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. "Then what is it?" He didn't answer. Outside, sirens wailed. Helicopters thumped overhead. The campus that had felt so alive that morning now seemed fragile, brittle, ready to shatter. I lay awake long after Marcus fell asleep, staring at the ceiling. Lena's words echoed in my head. Something's wrong. I didn't know it yet, but that day was the last normal day of my life. The storm had already begun. The next morning, the campus felt different. The usual chatter of students on the quad was muted, replaced by nervous whispers. Flyers about flu clinics were taped to every lamppost. Sirens wailed in the distance, more frequent now, echoing through the hills. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Just another scare, like swine flu or SARS. But when I walked into Wheeler Hall for my history lecture, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Students sat stiffly in their seats, eyes darting toward the door every time it opened. Professor Klein strode in, his usual energy dimmed. He cleared his throat. Before we begin, I want to address the rumors. Yes, there have been incidents. Yes, the administration is monitoring the situation, but panic helps no one. Civilization survives because we keep our heads. His words barely settled before a scream cut through the hall. A student in the back row convulsed, his body jerking violently. His chair toppled, crashing against the floor. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone shouted for help. I froze, my heart hammering. The student's eyes snapped open, clouded, milky. He lurched upright with inhuman speed, teeth bared. He sank them into the arm of the girl beside him. Her scream tore through the hall. Chaos erupted. Students bolted for the doors, shoving, tripping, trampling. Desks toppled, papers scattered. The infected student lunged again, blood spraying across the floor. Professor Klein shouted, "Stay calm! Stay!" The words ended in a gurgle as the boy tackled him, teeth sinking into his throat. Blood sprayed across the chalkboard. I stumbled backward, nearly falling over a chair. Lena grabbed my arm, her face pale. "Daniel, move!" We shoved through the panicked crowd, the sound of screams and tearing flesh behind us. The doors jammed as dozens tried to push through at once. I slammed my shoulder into the frame, forcing it open. We spilled into the hallway, gasping. But the infection was already spreading. Down the corridor, another student collapsed, then rose with that same clouded stare. He lunged at a group of freshmen, dragging one down. Blood pooled across the tile. Lena pulled me toward the stairwell. "We have to get out, now!" We barreled down the steps, nearly colliding with Marcus, who was sprinting up. His face was wild, sweat dripping down his temples. "Daniel, they're everywhere, the dorms. People are turning." The three of us burst out into the quad. The campus was chaos. Students ran in every direction, some screaming, some bleeding. Sirens wailed as campus police fired pistols at staggering figures. The infected didn't stop. They didn't even flinch. One officer was dragged down near the fountain, his gun clattering across the pavement. Another fired until his clip ran dry, then disappeared beneath a swarm of bodies. Lena's voice shook. "This isn't a flu. This is—" "Don't say it," Marcus snapped. But we all knew. We sprinted across the quad, dodging bodies. A girl stumbled toward us, her arm torn open, blood soaking her hoodie. She reached out, pleading, "Help me, please!" Lena froze, torn, but Marcus yanked her forward. "We can't! She's gone!" The girl's eyes clouded even as we passed. Her scream turned into a guttural moan. We reached the dorms, but the doors were barricaded from the inside. Students pounded on the glass, begging to be let in. Inside, silhouettes shoved furniture against the doors, ignoring the cries. Marcus cursed. "We're on our own!" The infected closed in, their moans echoing across the campus. Dozens of them now, maybe more. Their movements were jerky but relentless, their eyes locked on us. Jackhammers of panic pounded in my chest. "Where do we go?" Lena pointed towards the library. "Basement stacks, reinforced doors. We can hide." We sprinted, the infected chasing. My lungs burned, my legs screamed. But adrenaline kept me moving. We crashed through the library doors, slamming them shut behind us. The moans pressed against the glass, fists pounding. Cracks spiderwebbed across the panes. Marcus shoved a table against the door. "That won't hold long." We stumbled into the basement, the air thick with dust and old paper. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting long shadows. We collapsed against the shelves, gasping. Lena's hands shook as she clutched her notes. It spreads too fast. Minutes, not hours. We're not dealing with a virus. This is something else. Marcus wiped blood from his cheek, his eyes wild. Then what the hell are we dealing with? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Above us, the pounding grew louder. The glass shattered. Dot. The first infection had begun. Dot, and the campus would never be the same. The pounding on the library doors grew louder, glass cracking under the relentless fists of the infected. Marcus shoved another table against the entrance, sweat dripping down his face. This won't hold, he muttered. Lena's voice was sharp. Then we moved deeper, basement stacks, reinforced doors. We stumbled down the stairwell, the fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The air grew colder, dustier, the smell of old paper thick. We shoved through the heavy basement doors and slammed the bolt. For a moment, silence. Then the alarms began. A shrill siren echoed across campus, followed by a robotic voice over the loudspeakers. Attention students and faculty, shelter in place. This is a campus lockdown. Remain in your dorms or designated safe zones. Do not attempt to leave. Marcus barked a bitter laugh. Too late for that. We huddled among the stacks, the sirens wailing above. Through the vents, we heard chaos. Screams, gunshots, the moans of the infected. The lockdown wasn't saving anyone. It was trapping them. Hours passed. The basement grew stifling, the air heavy with fear. Students trickled in, faces pale, clothes stained with blood. Some cried quietly, others sat in stunned silence. A girl named Harper clutched her phone, whispering into it, "Mum, Mum, please pick up." Her voice cracked, then broke. Lena crouched beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. The lines are jammed, everyone's calling at once. I sat against the wall, my chest tight. Every sound from above made me flinch. The infected were out there, pounding, clawing, waiting. Then the PA crackled again. "This is the Berkeley Police Department. The campus is under quarantine. Do not attempt to leave. National Guard units are en route." Quarantine. The word sent a chill through me. Marcus shook his head. "They're not coming to save us. They're coming to contain us." The truth settled like lead. We weren't being protected. We were being sealed in. By nightfall, the basement was packed. Dozens of students, some injured, some bitten. One boy sat in the corner, clutching his arm, blood seeping through his sleeve. His eyes were glassy, his breathing ragged. Lena's gaze locked on him. "He's infected." The boy shook his head weakly. "It's just a cut. I'm fine." But we all knew. Whispers spread. Fear thickened. Some demanded he be thrown out. Others begged for mercy. The boy sobbed, clutching his arm tighter. Marcus muttered, "If he turns in here, we're all dead." The argument grew louder, voices clashing, panic rising. I pressed my hands to my ears, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about the infected outside. It was about us, tearing ourselves apart. Then the boy convulsed. His body jerked, his eyes clouded. A guttural moan escaped his throat. Screams erupted. Students scrambled back, knocking over shelves. The boy lunged, teeth snapping. Marcus swung his crowbar, the crack of bone echoing through the basement. The boy collapsed, blood pooling across the floor. Silence followed, broken only by sobs. Lena's face was pale, her voice trembling. "It's minutes. That's all it takes." The reality hit us all. No one bitten could be saved. The night dragged on. The infected pounded above. The sirens wailed. The air grew thick with despair. Some students prayed, others stared blankly into the dark. I sat with Marcus and Lena, my body trembling. "We can't stay here. If the guard comes, they'll kill us all. If the infected break through, we're trapped." Marcus nodded grimly. Then we find a way out, before it's too late. Lena's eyes burned. We'll need supplies, weapons, a plan. The three of us sat in silence, the weight of the decision pressing down. Above us, the campus burned. The lockdown had begun. And it was already failing. The pounding above us grew louder, the library doors splintering under the weight of the infected. Dust rained from the ceiling as fists and bodies slammed against the barricades. Marcus gripped his crowbar, his knuckles white. We can't wait any longer, they're coming through. Lena's eyes darted to me. Daniel, if we stay, we die. We need to move. Now. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Then where? The dorms are sealed. The library's a death trap. Marcus pointed toward the windowless stairwell at the far end of the basement. Maintenance tunnels. They connect to the stadium. If we can reach the field, maybe we can slip out. The pounding grew deafening. Screams echoed from above as more students were dragged down. We didn't have time to argue. We pushed through the stairwell door, the air thick with mildew. The narrow steps wound upward, each creak of the metal echoing like a gunshot. At the top, we shoved through another door and emerged into the main library hall. It was carnage. Books lay scattered across the marble floor, blood smeared across the walls. Students ran in every direction, chased by staggering figures with clouded eyes and snapping jaws. A girl tripped near the circulation desk, her scream cut short as 3 infected fell on her. Marcus cursed under his breath. We can't fight through this. Lena grabbed my arm, pulling me towards the side exit. This way. We sprinted across the hall, dodging bodies. An infected lunged at me, its teeth snapping inches from my face. I swung my backpack, knocking it aside, then bolted after Lena. The side doors burst open, spilling us into the quad. The night air reeked of smoke and blood. Fires burned in trash cans and overturned cars. Sirens wailed. Helicopters thumped overhead, their searchlights sweeping the chaos. The campus was gone. Dozens of infected swarmed the lawn, their moans echoing across the buildings. Students fought with makeshift weapons, baseball bats, chairs, even broken bottles. Others simply ran, their screams piercing the night. Marcus pointed toward the stadium lights in the distance. That's our shot. If we can reach the tunnels under Memorial Stadium, we can get out. We sprinted across the quad, weaving through the chaos. A group of campus police fired pistols near the fountain, their bullets dropping infected one by one. But the horde was too large. The officers were dragged down, their screams lost in the roar. We ducked into Sathergate, the stone arch looming above us. The infected pressed closer, their footsteps pounding behind us. My lungs burned, my legs screamed, but adrenaline kept me moving. At the edge of the stadium, we found the maintenance entrance, a steel door half open, its lock broken. Marcus shoved it wide, and we slipped inside. The tunnels were dark, the air damp and cold. Pipes lined the walls, dripping water. Our footsteps echoed as we ran, the sound of pursuit close behind. Lena's voice trembled. We can't outrun them forever, we need a plan. Marcus gritted his teeth. We get to the field. From there, we make for the parking lot. If we can find a car... The words died as a figure staggered from the shadows. A janitor, his uniform torn, his eyes clouded. He lunged, teeth snapping. Marcus swung his crowbar, the crack of bone echoing. The janitor collapsed, blood pooling across the concrete. Lena flinched, her face pale. God! We pressed on, the tunnel sloping upward. The roar of the crowd above grew louder, not cheers, but screams. We burst onto the field, and the sight froze me. The stadium was a slaughterhouse. Thousands of students had gathered, hoping for evacuation. Now they were trapped. The infected poured through the stands, swarming the field. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights sweeping the carnage. Soldiers fired from the sidelines, their rifles cracking, but the horde was endless. Lena grabbed my arm. "We can't stay here." Marcus pointed towards the far gate. "Parking lot! Move!" We sprinted across the field, dodging bodies. A soldier shouted at us, waving us toward the barricades, but before we could reach him, the infected swarmed, dragging him down. His rifle clattered across the turf. Marcus snatched it up, firing wildly. The recoil nearly knocked him over, but the bullets tore through the horde, buying us seconds. We crashed through the far gate, stumbling into the parking lot. Cars were abandoned, doors hanging open, alarms blaring. Fires burned in the distance. Lena spotted a minivan with keys still in the ignition. "Here!" We piled in, Marcus behind the wheel. The engine roared to life. He slammed the gas, the van fishtailing across the lot. Infected pounded on the windows, their faces smeared with blood. Marcus floored it, mowing them down. We burst through the gates, the campus shrinking behind us. Smoke and fire rose into the night, the screams echoing long after we left. I looked back, my chest tight. The place that had been my home, my world, was gone. The University of California, Berkeley had fallen. And we were fugitives in our own country. The minivan roared down Telegraph Avenue, its tires screeching as Marcus swerved around abandoned cars. The city was chaos. Fires burned in storefronts, alarms wailed, and the infected staggered through the streets, their moans echoing off the buildings. I clutched the dashboard, my knuckles white. "Where are we even going?" Marcus's eyes were wild, fixed on the road. "South. Freeway. We get out of Berkeley before the guard seals it off." Lena twisted in her seat, checking on Zoe and the other children we'd picked up in the chaos. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide with shock. She tried to smile, but it faltered. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're safe now." But none of us believed it. We hit the on-ramp to I-80, and the sight froze me. The freeway was a graveyard. Cars stretched for miles, bumper to bumper, doors hanging open. Some were burned out, others smeared with blood. Bodies lay sprawled across the asphalt, their faces twisted in terror. Marcus cursed. Traffic jam from hell. He swerved onto the shoulder, the van bouncing over debris. The tires crunched over glass and bone. I tried not to look, but the images burned into my mind. Families slumped in minivans, children's toys scattered across the road, blood smeared across windshields. Lena's voice was tight. They tried to evacuate, everyone at once. They never had a chance. We crawled forward, weaving between wrecks. The silence was broken only by the distant thump of helicopters and the occasional gunshot. Then came the moan. Figures stirred among the cars. Dozens of them, then hundreds clawing their way out of wrecks, staggering toward us. Their eyes glowed faintly in the headlights, their mouths dripping red. Marcus floored the gas. The van lurched forward, mowing down the first wave. Bodies thudded against the hood, blood spraying across the windshield. The children screamed. I grabbed the wheel, steadying it as Marcus fought to keep control. "We can't plow through all of them." "Then give me another option," he shouted. The horde swarmed, pounding on the van, clawing at the windows. Glass cracked, hands reaching inside. Lena swung a tire iron, smashing fingers, blood spraying. I kicked at the door, shoving bodies back. Marcus swerved onto the median, the van bouncing violently. We barreled past wrecks, the horde chasing, their moans deafening. Ahead, the freeway split. One ramp led towards San Francisco, the other east towards Sacramento. Both were clogged with wrecks, fires burning. Marcus's voice was raw. "Pick one," Lena shouted. "East, away from the cities." Marcus yanked the wheel, the van skidding onto the Sacramento ramp. The horde followed, pouring over the wrecks like a tidal wave. We sped down the ramp, the road opening briefly. For a moment, hope flickered. Then headlights appeared ahead. A military convoy blocked the freeway. Humvees, barricades, soldiers in gas masks. They raised rifles, shouting, "Stop the vehicle! Stop now!" Marcus slammed the brakes, the van screeching to a halt. Soldiers surrounded us, rifles aimed. One yanked the door open, dragging Marcus out. "Hands on your head, now!" I stumbled out, my heart pounding. Lena clutched Zoe, shielding her. The children cried, their voices piercing the night. The officer's voice was muffled through his mask. "This area is under quarantine. No one leaves. You're all exposed." Lena's eyes widened. "We're not infected. We're survivors." The officer didn't flinch. "Orders are clear. No one passes." Behind us, the horde surged closer, their moans rising. The soldiers opened fire, bullets tearing through the infected. Bodies dropped, but more pressed forward. Marcus shouted, "If you don't let us through, we all die." The officer hesitated, then barked, "Fall back! Open the barricade!" The Humvees shifted, creating a narrow gap. Marcus dove back into the van, slamming the gas. We barreled through as bullets cracked overhead, the horde crashing against the barricade behind us. The freeway stretched ahead, empty and dark. Fires burned on the horizon, smoke curling into the sky. Lena clutched Zoe, her voice trembling. "Where do we go now?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Anywhere but here." I stared out the window, the endless road stretching into the night. The campus was gone. The city was gone. The freeway was a graveyard. We were alive, but we had no destination. Dot. The road ahead was nowhere. Dot. The minivan rattled off the freeway and into the quiet sprawl of East Bay suburbs. Rows of pastel houses lined the streets, their manicured lawns now littered with overturned bikes and abandoned toys. Porch lights flickered, some still glowing, others shattered. For a moment, it looked like the apocalypse hadn't touched this place. But the silence was wrong. Marcus slowed the van, his eyes scanning. "Looks empty. We can hole up here, at least for the night." Lena frowned. "Empty doesn't mean safe." We pulled into a cul-de-sac, the van idling in front of a 2-story house with its garage door half open. The driveway was clear, no cars, no bodies. Marcus killed the engine. "We'll check it out." Inside, the house smelled of dust and stale air. Family photos still hung on the walls, smiling parents, 2 kids in soccer uniforms. A half-eaten bowl of cereal sat on the counter, milk long curdled. It was as if the family had vanished mid-morning routine. Zoe clung to Tasha's leg, whispering, "Where did they go?" No one answered. We barricaded the doors with furniture, then gathered in the living room. For the first time in days, there was quiet. No sirens, no gunfire, no moans, just the hum of the refrigerator still running on backup power. Eddie slumped onto the couch, his crowbar across his knees. "Feels almost normal." Almost. But normal didn't last. At dusk, the first moans drifted through the cul-de-sac. Shadows staggered between the houses, drawn by the sound of our voices, the smell of life. Figures emerged from the dark, neighbors still in pajamas, still clutching gardening tools or grocery bags. Their eyes were clouded, their mouths dripping red. Lena's face went pale. They never left. They turned here. The infected swarmed the street, pounding on doors, clawing at windows. Lights flicked on in other houses. Survivors peered out, their faces pale with terror. A man shouted from across the street, "Help us!" Marcus cursed. "We can't fight them all." But the neighbors didn't care. They poured from their houses, desperate, some armed with bats and kitchen knives. They ran toward us, screaming for shelter. The infected followed, moans rising into a deafening chorus. The cul-de-sac became a war zone. We fired from the windows, bullets cracking, glass shattering. Marcus swung his crowbar, skulls splitting. Lena hurled bottles and furniture to block the doors. Tasha shielded Zoe, whispering prayers. The neighbours pounded on our barricades, begging to be let in. "Please! Please, they're coming!" Eddie shouted back, "We can't! We'll all die!" But one man forced his way through a side window, bloodied and frantic. He stumbled inside, dragging his wife behind him. "You have to help us!" Before we could react, his wife convulsed. Her eyes clouded, her mouth opened in a guttural moan. She lunged at Eddie, teeth snapping. Eddie swung his crowbar, the crack of bone echoing. Blood sprayed across the wall. The man screamed, collapsing beside her body. "No! No!" The infected outside pressed harder, their fists pounding, their moans shaking the walls. The barricades buckled. Lena's voice trembled. "We can't hold this house. We'll be overrun." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Then we fight our way out." We grabbed what we could, crowbars, knives, a half-empty pistol. Marcus kicked the back door open, and we spilled into the yard. The infected swarmed, their eyes glowing in the dark. We fought like animals. My tire iron cracked skulls, blood spraying across the grass. Eddie roared, his crowbar dripping red. Lena stabbed with a kitchen knife, her hands shaking. Marcus fired until the pistol clicked empty, then swung it like a club. The neighbours screamed as they were dragged down, their cries cut short. The cul-de-sac burned, houses collapsing, fire spreading. We stumbled towards the van, the infected closing in. Marcus slammed the doors, the engine roaring to life. We barreled through the street, mowing down bodies, flames lighting the night. Behind us, the cul-de-sac was consumed. Houses burning, neighbours screaming, infected swarming. Zoe clutched her mother, her small voice trembling. "Why does everywhere we go burn?" Tasha stroked her hair, tears streaking her face. "Because the world's sick, baby, but we're still here." I stared out the window, my chest tight. The suburbs had promised safety, but they were just another graveyard. The siege was over. And we were still running. The minivan's tires screeched as Marcus pulled off the highway and into the cracked asphalt lot of Hillcrest Mall. The once bustling shopping centre loomed in the dark, its neon signs flickering, half the letters burned out. The parking lot was littered with abandoned cars, some with doors hanging open, others smeared with blood. Lena leaned forward, her voice tight. "Why here?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "Because it's fortified, look." Floodlights swept across the lot, mounted on the mall's roof. Makeshift barricades of cars and fencing surrounded the entrances. Figures patrolled with rifles, their silhouettes sharp against the glow. Eddie muttered, "Well, damn. Somebody turned Black Friday into a fortress." We rolled closer, hands raised as armed men approached. Their leader was a broad-shouldered man in a security uniform, his badge still pinned to his chest. His name tag read Dawson. "State your business," he barked. Marcus kept his voice steady. "We're survivors. We've got kids. We need shelter." Dawson studied us, then jerked his head. "Search them." Guards patted us down, confiscating Marcus's pistol and Eddie's crowbar. Dawson's eyes lingered on Zoe and the other children. "You can stay, but you follow our rules. No exceptions." Inside the mall was a strange mix of normalcy and nightmare. The food court had been converted into a mess hall, the clothing stores into dormitories. Families huddled on mattresses, their faces pale. The air smelled of sweat, fear, and stale popcorn. Dawson led us through, his voice booming. "We've kept this place secure for weeks. We've got food, water, power, but it only works because we enforce order. Step out of line and you're out." Lena whispered to me, "Out means dead." We were assigned a corner of a shuttered bookstore. Zoe curled up beside Tasha, clutching a stuffed bear someone had given her. For the first time in days, she slept. But peace was an illusion. That night I wandered the mall, unable to sleep. I passed the old arcade, now a guard post. Beyond it I heard muffled cries. Peering through a gap, I saw Dawson and his men dragging a man into a storage room. His hands were bound, his face bruised. Dawson's voice was cold. "You stole food. That's a death sentence." The man begged, sobbing, but the guards didn't hesitate. A gunshot echoed, muffled by the walls. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. The next morning, Dawson addressed the survivors in the food court. "We are strong because we are ruthless. The infected are outside waiting to tear us apart. If we show weakness, we die. Remember that." Some nodded, grateful for his protection. Others looked away, fear etched into their faces. Lena's eyes burned. "He's not protecting them. He's ruling them." Marcus muttered, "Better a tyrant than a corpse." But the cracks were already showing. That afternoon, a group of teenagers tried to sneak out through a service exit. Dawson caught them. He dragged them into the food court, forcing everyone to watch as he beat them bloody. "This is what happens when you endanger the group," he snarled. Zoe buried her face in Tasha's chest, trembling. Eddie's fists clenched. "We can't stay here." That night, Lena pulled me aside. "I saw something. In the basement. They're hoarding supplies, food, medicine. Dawson's men eat like kings while the rest starve." My chest tightened. "If people find out, they'll revolt," she finished. "And Dawson knows it." The tension snapped 2 nights later. A father confronted Dawson in the food court, demanding food for his sick daughter. Dawson shot him in front of everyone. The mall erupted. Survivors screamed, some rushing Dawson, others fleeing. Gunfire cracked, glass shattered, chaos exploding through the halls. Marcus grabbed Zoe, shouting, "We're leaving!" We fought our way through the panicked crowd. Eddie swung his crowbar, blood spraying. Lena fired a stolen pistol, her hands shaking. Tasha shielded Zoe, whispering prayers. The infected, drawn by the noise, swarmed the barricades. Their moans echoed through the parking lot as they clawed at the entrances. Guards fired wildly, torn between the horde outside and the uprising inside. The mall fortress collapsed in hours. We burst through a side exit, stumbling into the night. Behind us, Hillcrest Mall burned, flames lighting the sky. Screams echoed, gunfire cracked. The infected poured inside. Zoe clung to her mother, her small voice trembling. "Why does everywhere we go burn?" Tasha's tears streaked her face. "Because the world's sick, baby. But we're still here." I looked back at the burning mall, my chest tight. Dawson's fortress had promised safety, but it was just another graveyard. The refuge was gone. And the road stretched endless ahead. We drove through the night, the van rattling along cracked highways. Fires burned on the horizon, smoke curling into the sky. Every town we passed was the same. Dark, silent, abandoned. The only light came from the occasional blaze of a gas station or the flicker of a burning house. By dawn, we reached the outskirts of Stockton. The city skyline loomed, but something was wrong. No streetlights, no neon signs, no hum of power. The entire grid was dead. Marcus slowed the van, his voice low. "The lights are out," Eddie muttered. "Not just here, look." We climbed a freeway overpass, and the sight froze me. The valley stretched for miles, but not a single light glowed. Cities, towns, suburbs, all swallowed by darkness. California's power grid had collapsed. Lena's voice trembled. Without power, hospitals fail. Water stops pumping, food spoils. Everything falls apart. The silence was broken by a distant boom. Smoke rose from downtown, followed by gunfire. The city was tearing itself apart. We pulled into a strip mall, its parking lot littered with broken glass. Stores had been looted, windows smashed, shelves stripped bare. The air smelled of smoke and rot. Inside a grocery store, we scavenged what we could. Cans of beans, bottled water, a half-empty box of crackers. Lena grabbed medical supplies from the pharmacy, her hands shaking. Zoe clutched her mother's hand, whispering, "Why is it so dark?" Tasha knelt, her voice soft. "Because the lights are gone, baby. But we'll keep you safe." We weren't alone. Shadows moved between the aisles. Survivors, gaunt and desperate, their eyes hollow. One man clutched a baseball bat, his knuckles white. Another held a knife, his hands trembling. Marcus raised his hands. "We don't want trouble, just food." The man with the bat snarled, "There's no food left. Get out." Eddie stepped forward, his crowbar gleaming. "We're not leaving empty-handed." The tension snapped. The man swung his bat. Eddie blocked with his crowbar, the crack of wood on steel echoing. Chaos erupted. Survivors lunged, fists flying, knives flashing. I grabbed Zoe, pulling her behind a shelf. Lena fired her pistol into the ceiling, the blast deafening. "Stop! Stop!" Silence fell, broken only by ragged breaths. The survivors backed away, their eyes burning with hunger and hate. Marcus shoved cans into his bag, his voice raw. "We're leaving, now." We bolted from the store, the survivors' shouts echoing behind us. The parking lot was chaos, cars burning, people fighting, infected, staggering from the shadows. The blackout had unleashed madness. We piled into the van, Marcus flooring the gas. We barreled down the street, weaving between wrecks. Fires burned on every corner, looters smashed windows, gunshots cracked. The city was a war zone. Lena's voice shook. "Without power, there's no order, no law, just survival." Eddie muttered, "And the strong take everything." We drove through the night, the darkness absolute. No headlights, no street lamps, no stars through the smoke. Just the glow of fires and the moans of the infected. At a gas station, we stopped to siphon fuel. The pumps were dead, the lights out. Marcus pried open a car's tank, filling a jug. Then the moans came. Figures staggered from the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly. Dozens of them, drawn by the sound. Eddie swung his crowbar, skulls cracking. Marcus fired the pistol, bullets sparking. Lena dragged Zoe into the van, her hands trembling. We fought desperately, blood spraying across the asphalt. The infected pressed closer, their moans deafening. Marcus shouted, "Go! Go!" We piled into the van, the engine roaring. Eddie leaned out the window, swinging his crowbar, blood spraying. We barreled down the road, the infected chasing, their moans echoing. The blackout stretched endless. Every city we passed was the same. Dark, burning, broken. Hospitals abandoned, sirens silent, streets littered with bodies. The grid was gone, and with it, civilization. Zoe whispered from the back seat, her voice trembling. "Will the lights ever come back?" No one answered. The blackout had begun. And California was falling into darkness. The Pacific called to us like a promise. After days of darkness and fire, the thought of the ocean felt like salvation. Rumors spread among survivors we passed on the road, whispers of evacuation points along the coast, ferries carrying people to safety, Navy ships offshore. Marcus gripped the wheel, his eyes fixed on the horizon. If there's anywhere left, it's the coast. They can't quarantine the ocean. Lena's voice was cautious. Or it's just another trap. But hope was all we had. We reached Highway 1 by dawn. The road wound along cliffs, the ocean stretching endless and grey. The salt air stung my lungs, the waves crashing against jagged rocks below. For a moment, it almost felt normal. Then we saw the beach. Hundreds of people crowded the sand, waving makeshift flags, shouting at the helicopters circling overhead. Families huddled around campfires, their faces gaunt. Some clutched suitcases, others nothing at all. They were waiting for rescue that never came. We parked on the bluff, staring down. Eddie muttered, "Looks like half of California had the same idea." We climbed down, weaving through the crowd. The air reeked of sweat, salt, and fear. Children cried, mothers begged soldiers in the distance for help, but the soldiers weren't there to save anyone. A line of Humvees blocked the pier, soldiers in gas masks standing guard. Their rifles were raised, their voices cold. "This area is under quarantine. No boats. No evacuation. Return inland." The crowd erupted. People screamed, surged forward, begging for mercy. The soldiers fired warning shots into the air. Panic rippled through the beach. Lena grabbed my arm. "Daniel, this isn't a rescue, it's containment." Then the moans came. From the cliffs, from the dunes, from the wrecked lifeguard towers, they poured in. The infected. Dozens, then hundreds, staggering toward the crowd. Their moans rose into a deafening chorus. The beach became a slaughterhouse. The infected crashed into the civilians, dragging them down. Screams tore through the air, blood spraying across the sand. Families scattered, trampled, torn apart. The soldiers opened fire, bullets ripping through bodies, but the horde was endless. Marcus shouted, "Back to the van, now!" We fought through the chaos. Eddie swung his crowbar, skulls cracking. Lena fired her pistol, each shot precise. Tasha clutched Zoe, shielding her from the carnage. I shoved bodies aside, my chest burning. The pier collapsed under the weight of the crowd, people plunging into the ocean. Some tried to swim, their screams cut short as the infected followed, thrashing in the waves. The water turned red, the tide carrying bodies out to sea. We stumbled back up the bluff, gasping. The beach below was a nightmare. Fires burning, soldiers retreating, the infected swarming. Helicopters circled once, then turned inland, abandoning the survivors. Zoe's voice trembled. "Why didn't they help?" Tasha's tears streaked her face. "Because the world's broken, baby, and no one's coming." We collapsed beside the van, our bodies trembling. The ocean stretched endless, mocking us. The coast had promised salvation, but it was just another graveyard. Lena's voice was hoarse. "There's no safe zone, no evacuation, just more death." Marcus stared at the horizon, his jaw clenched. "Then we stop chasing ghosts. We make our own way." The waves crashed below, carrying the dead out to sea. The coastline had been a trap dot, and the ocean offered no escape dot. The van rattled down the dark highway, smoke curling across the road. We thought we'd escaped the coastline nightmare, but the illusion of freedom didn't last. Floodlights cut through the night ahead, blinding us. A barricade stretched across the freeway. Humvees, razor wire, sandbags. Soldiers in gas masks raised rifles, their voices booming. "Stop the vehicle! Hands where we can see them!" Marcus slammed the brakes, the van skidding to a halt. Soldiers yanked the doors open, dragging us out. Zoe screamed as Tasha clutched her tight. Eddie swung his crowbar instinctively, but a rifle butt slammed into his chest, dropping him to the asphalt. We were herded behind the barricade, our wrists zip-tied. The officer in charge, a tall man with a scar across his cheek, studied us coldly. His name tag read, Lieutenant Harper. "You're in a quarantine zone now," he said. "You'll be processed at Camp Delta. If you're clean, you'll live. If not..." He didn't finish. The camp was a high school football field ringed with barbed wire. Floodlights bathed the bleachers in harsh white. Tents lined the turf filled with coughing, trembling civilians. The air reeked of sweat, blood, and fear. We were shoved into a holding pen. Dozens of survivors crammed together. Soldiers patrolled the perimeter, rifles always ready. Loudspeakers blared. "Remain calm. You are safe. The infection is under control." But it wasn't safe, and nothing was under control. A woman in the pen whispered, "They test you. Blood draws. If you're sick, they take you behind the bleachers. No one comes back." Lena's face paled. "They're not curing anyone, they're executing them." That night we watched as soldiers dragged a man from the pen. He begged, swore he wasn't infected. His screams echoed from behind the bleachers, then cut off with a single gunshot. Zoe buried her face in her mother's chest, trembling. The next morning they came for us. We were lined up at a folding table, a medic in gloves drawing blood. He barely looked at us, his hands shaking. Vials filled with dark red liquid were stacked in crates. When it was Zoe's turn, the medic hesitated. Her blood was clear, bright, almost luminous under the light. He frowned, whispering to the officer beside him. Lieutenant Harper's eyes narrowed. "Flag her. Special processing." Tasha clutched Zoe, her voice breaking. "She's just a child." Harper's tone was flat. "Then she's valuable." They tried to separate her. Marcus lunged, headbutting a soldier, chaos erupting. Eddie swung his crowbar, blood spraying. Lena grabbed Zoe, pulling her back. Alarms blared, soldiers shouting, rifles cracking. We fought like cornered animals. Marcus tackled a guard, ripping the rifle from his hands. Eddie smashed skulls, his roar echoing. Lena fired wildly, dragging Zoe toward the fence. The camp dissolved into chaos. Civilians surged, screaming, some attacking soldiers, others fleeing. Gunfire tore through the crowd, bodies dropping. The infected, drawn by the noise, swarmed the perimeter, clawing at the wire. The fence buckled. The horde poured in. The camp became a slaughterhouse. Soldiers fired in every direction, civilians trampled each other. The infected tore through tents. Floodlights shattered, plunging the field into chaos. We fought our way through the madness. Marcus fired the stolen rifle, bullets cracking. Eddie swung until his crowbar bent. Lena dragged Zoe, her face streaked with blood. I shoved bodies aside, my chest burning. We reached the far fence, barbed wire slicing our hands as we climbed. Behind us, the camp burned, screams echoing into the night. On the other side, we collapsed in the dirt, gasping. Zoe clung to her mother, her small voice trembling. "Why do they want me?" Lena's eyes burned. "Because you're different, and that scares them." Marcus stared back at the flames, his jaw clenched. The military's not saving anyone. They're just killing slower than the dead. The quarantine had promised safety. But it was just another graveyard dot. The flames of Camp Delta still burned behind us, their glow staining the night sky. We stumbled through the dirt fields beyond the fence, our bodies bruised, our lungs raw from smoke. The screams of those left behind echoed in my ears, mingling with the guttural moans of the infected tearing through the camp. Marcus led the way, rifle clutched tight, his face streaked with soot. Lena carried Zoe, her arms trembling but steady. Eddie limped beside me, his crowbar bent from the fight. Tasha trailed close, her eyes hollow. We were alive, but barely. We didn't get far before headlights cut across the field. A Humvee roared toward us, soldiers leaning from the back with rifles raised. "Down!" Marcus shouted. We dove into the grass as bullets tore through the night. Dirt sprayed, Zoe screamed. Marcus fired back, the rifle cracking. One soldier toppled from the Humvee, his body rolling across the field. The vehicle skidded, swerving to a stop. Soldiers poured out, shouting. Eddie roared, swinging his crowbar, skulls cracking. Lena fired her pistol, each shot precise. Marcus dropped two more before the rest retreated, dragging their wounded. The Humvee roared away, leaving silence. We gasped, our bodies trembling. Zoe clung to her mother, sobbing. Marcus's jaw clenched. They're not going to stop. We're fugitives now, both from the dead and the living. We pressed on, deeper into the fields. The night stretched endless, the stars hidden by smoke. Every sound made me flinch. The rustle of grass, the distant moan of the infected, the thump of helicopters circling overhead. By dawn, we reached an abandoned farmhouse. Its windows were shattered, its walls scorched. But it was shelter. We collapsed inside, our bodies aching. Lena laid Zoe on a mattress, brushing hair from her face. "She's burning up," she whispered. Tasha's voice cracked. "Is it the infection?" Lena shook her head. "No, she's different. Her body's fighting something, but not like the others. She's stronger." Marcus paced, his eyes burning. "That's why the military wanted her. They know she's immune." The words hung heavy. Zoe wasn't just a child anymore. She was a target. That night we argued. Marcus wanted to keep moving east, away from the cities. "The Guard will sweep the coast. We head inland, find the desert. Fewer people, fewer infected." Lena disagreed. "We need answers. If Zoe's immune, there has to be a reason. Somewhere, someone's studying this. We can't just run forever." Eddie slammed his crowbar against the wall. "We're not scientists. We're survivors, and survivors don't chase fairy tales." The tension snapped. Voices rose, fists clenched. For the first time, it wasn't the infected tearing us apart. It was us. Zoe's small voice cut through the shouting. "Stop!" We froze. She sat up, her eyes clear, her face calm. "We have to stay together. If we don't, we all die." Silence fell. Marcus exhaled, his shoulders slumping. "She's right." We stayed the night in uneasy silence, the farmhouse creaking around us. Outside, the moans of the infected drifted on the wind. At dawn, we moved again. The roads were littered with wrecks, the fields with bodies. Helicopters circled in the distance, their searchlights sweeping. We stayed low, moving through orchards and ditches, always watching the sky. By midday, we reached a small town. Its streets were empty, its windows shattered. A church bell tolled in the distance, though no one was there to ring it. We scavenged what we could: cans of food, bottles of water, a box of ammunition. In the pharmacy, Lena found medical supplies, her hands trembling with relief. But the relief didn't last. As we left, we heard engines. Trucks roared into town, soldiers spilling out. They weren't here to save anyone. They were hunting. Marcus cursed. "They're tracking us." We ran, the soldiers shouting, bullets cracking. Eddie swung his crowbar, dropping one. Marcus fired, covering our retreat. Lena dragged Zoe, her face pale with fear. We ducked into an alley, hearts pounding. The soldiers closed in, their boots echoing. Marcus turned, his voice raw. "Go! I'll hold them!" "No!" I shouted. But he was already moving, firing wildly, drawing their attention. We fled through the alley, Zoe clutched tight, the sound of gunfire echoing behind us. When we reached the fields beyond, Marcus was gone. Tasha sobbed, clutching Zoe. Eddie slammed his crowbar into the dirt, his roar echoing. Lena's face was pale, her eyes hollow. We had broken out of the camp, but we had lost more than we'd gained. The central valley gave way to barren earth and endless sky. We left the farmland behind, trading orchards and silos for cracked dirt roads and dry riverbeds. The sun beat down mercilessly, baking the ground until it shimmered. Every step felt heavier than the last. Marcus was gone, sacrificed to buy us time. His absence hung over us like a shadow. Eddie limped, his crowbar dragging in the dust. Lena carried Zoe when Tasha's arms gave out, her face pale with exhaustion. I led the way, though I had no idea where we were going. East. Always east. Toward the desert. By midday, the heat was unbearable. Our water was nearly gone, our lips cracked, our throats raw, the horizon wavered, mirages dancing, shimmering lakes that vanished when we drew near. Eddie muttered under his breath, his eyes glassy. I see them. Faces. Everyone we lost. They're walking with us. Lena shot me a worried glance. He's dehydrated, hallucinating. But I wasn't sure. In the heat haze, I swore I saw them too. Marcus, Professor Klein, the students from Berkeley. Their eyes followed us, accusing, silent. We collapsed beneath a dead tree, its branches skeletal against the sky. Tasha cradled Zoe, whispering prayers. Zoe's eyes were clear, her breathing steady, as if the heat didn't touch her. Lena wiped sweat from her brow. She's not like us. She doesn't weaken. She doesn't burn. I stared at Zoe, my chest tight. Then she's the reason we keep going. The desert didn't care. By nightfall, the temperature plummeted. The heat gave way to bone-deep cold. We huddled together, shivering, our breath fogging in the air. Coyotes howled in the distance, their cries echoing across the dunes. Eddie's teeth chattered. We're not gonna make it. Not like this. Lena's voice was sharp. Don't you dare give up. Not after everything. But her eyes betrayed her doubt. The next day we stumbled into a ghost town. A handful of crumbling buildings, a rusted gas station, a church with its steeple collapsed. The streets were empty, the silence suffocating. We scavenged what we could. Half a jug of water, a few cans of beans, a box of matches. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep us moving. In the church, we found bodies. Dozens of them, laid out in pews, their hands folded as if in prayer. They hadn't been torn apart. They had chosen to die together quietly, waiting for salvation that never came. Tasha covered Zoe's eyes, her voice trembling. Don't look, baby. But Zoe looked anyway. Her face was calm, unreadable. That night we lit a fire in the gas station, the flames flickering against the cracked walls. Eddie sat apart, staring into the dark. We're ghosts too. Just walking corpses, waiting our turn. I wanted to argue, but the words wouldn't come. The moans reached us just before dawn. Figures staggered from the dunes, their silhouettes black against the rising sun. Dozens of them, maybe more, drawn by the smoke of our fire. Their moans rose into a chorus, echoing across the desert. We scrambled to our feet, panic surging. Eddie swung his crowbar, skulls cracking. Lena fired her pistol, bullets sparking. Tasha clutched Zoe, dragging her toward the van we'd found rusting behind the station. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life. We piled in, the infected pounding on the windows, their faces smeared with blood. Eddie leaned out, swinging his crowbar, blood spraying. The van lurched forward, mowing down bodies. We barreled through the horde, the desert stretching endless ahead. Zoe sat in her mother's lap, her eyes clear, her face calm. She didn't cry, didn't tremble. She simply watched, as if she knew something we didn't. Lena's voice was hoarse. She's not just immune, she's evolving. The words chilled me more than the desert night. We drove until the van sputtered dry, then walked again, the desert swallowing us. The sun rose, the heat returned, and the march continued. The desert didn't care who we were, what we'd lost, or what we carried. But Zoe did. And somehow that was enough to keep us moving. Dotted. The desert spat us out into the Central Valley, a place that once fed the nation. Orchards stretched for miles, their branches heavy with fruit no one would ever pick. Silos loomed like tombstones, their shadows long across the cracked earth. The air smelled of dust, rot, and something sour, like decay baked into the soil. We stumbled into the first town at dusk. Its welcome sign still boasted population 3,200. But the streets were empty. Storefronts were shattered, cars abandoned mid-turn, doors hanging open as if everyone had fled at once. Eddie muttered, "Looks like a set from a western. Only thing missing is the tumbleweed." But the tumbleweed had been replaced by silence. We moved cautiously, weapons ready. The grocery store shelves were stripped bare, the pharmacy looted. In the diner, half-eaten meals still sat on tables, coffee cups tipped over, flies buzzing. Tasha clutched Zoe's hand, whispering, "Stay close, baby." The silence broke with a moan. From the orchard beyond the town, figures staggered between the trees. Dozens of them, their clothes torn, their mouths dripping red. They moved slowly, but their numbers swelled with every step. Lena's voice was sharp. "They're nesting here. The orchards are full of them." We ducked into the hardware store, barricading the doors. Inside, the shelves were half-stocked, tools, rope, nails. Eddie grabbed a hatchet, testing its weight. Better than nothing. We camped in the back room, our stomachs growling. The last of our food was gone. Hunger gnawed at us, sharper than fear. That night, the moans echoed through the town. The infected wandered the streets, their shadows long in the moonlight. We huddled in silence, every creak of the floorboards making my heart race. By morning, we were desperate. Lena suggested searching the silos. If the farmers stored grain, we might find something. We crept through the orchards, the trees heavy with rotting fruit. The infected moved among them, slow and aimless, like ghosts. We held our breath, slipping between rows, every step a gamble. At the silo, the stench hit us first. The doors hung open, flies swarming. Inside, the grain was spoiled, black with mold. But among the rot, we found sacks still sealed. Eddie tore one open, his face lighting up. "It's good. We can eat." We hauled what we could back to the hardware store, our arms trembling with relief. For the first time in days, we ate until our stomachs ached. It wasn't much, but it was life. But life in the ghost town came with a price. That night, the infected grew restless. Their moans rose, echoing through the streets. They pressed against the barricades, their fists pounding, their teeth snapping. The walls shook, dust raining from the ceiling. Zoe sat calmly, her eyes clear. "They know we're here." Tasha pulled her close, whispering, "Don't be afraid." But Zoe wasn't afraid. She was watching, studying. The barricades buckled. Eddie swung his hatchet, blood spraying. Lena fired her pistol, each shot deafening. I shoved shelves against the doors, my arms burning. The infected poured in, their moans deafening. We fought like animals. Eddie roared, his hatchet splitting skulls. Lena's pistol clicked empty, and she swung it like a club. Tasha shielded Zoe, her screams raw. I grabbed a hammer, smashing until my arms gave out. The store collapsed into chaos. Blood sprayed, bodies fell, the air thick with rot. We barely escaped, stumbling into the street, the infected swarming behind us. We ran through the orchards, branches clawing at our faces. The infected followed, their moans echoing. We didn't stop until the town was a smear on the horizon, the silos burning behind us. We collapsed in a ditch, gasping. Eddie's hands shook, blood dripping from his hatchet. Lena's face was pale, her eyes hollow. Tasha clutched Zoe, whispering prayers. Zoe's voice was calm. "They'll keep coming, everywhere we go." She was right. The ghost towns weren't empty. They were graveyards, haunted by the dead. And we were just passing through. The Sierra Nevada foothills rose before us, jagged silhouettes against the fading sun. After weeks of running through deserts and ghost towns, the sight of pine trees and snow-dusted peaks felt almost unreal. The air was cooler here, cleaner, carrying the scent of sap and earth instead of smoke and rot. We stumbled into a narrow valley at dusk. our bodies broken, our spirits frayed. Eddie limped heavily, his crowbar dragging. Lena carried Zoe when Tasha's arms gave out, her face pale with exhaustion. I led the way, though I had no idea where we were going, just higher, always higher, away from the dead. Then we saw the lights. Lanterns flickered along a ridge, illuminating a wooden palisade built from felled trees. Behind it, cabins clustered together, smoke curling from chimneys. Figures patrolled the walls, rifles slung across their shoulders. Eddie muttered, "Looks like we found ourselves a fort." We approached cautiously, hands raised. A voice barked from the wall. "Stop right there! State your business!" Marcus was gone, but I heard his voice in my head. "Be steady. Don't show fear." I called back, "We're survivors. We've got children. We're not infected." There was a pause, then the gates creaked open. A woman stepped out, tall and broad-shouldered, her hair streaked with grey. She wore a sheriff's badge pinned to her jacket. "I'm Sheriff Dalton," she said. "This is Haven. If you follow our rules, you'll live. Break them, and you're out." Inside, the settlement was alive. Dozens of survivors moved between cabins, carrying firewood, tending gardens, cooking over open flames. Children laughed, their voices strange after so much silence. For the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. We were given food, stew thick with beans and venison, and a cabin to share. Zoe ate quietly, her eyes wide. Tasha wept as she held her daughter, whispering, "We're safe, baby. We're safe." But safety came with a price. That night, Sheriff Dalton gathered us by the fire. Haven survives because we enforce order. Everyone works, everyone contributes, and no one leaves without permission. Lena frowned. "What if someone wants to go?" Dalton's eyes hardened. "Then they don't come back." The words chilled me. Haven wasn't just a refuge. It was a cage. Over the next days, we settled into the rhythm of the enclave. Eddie chopped wood, his muscles straining. Lena worked in the infirmary, her knowledge of biology invaluable. Tasha helped in the kitchen, Zoe always at her side. I joined the patrols, rifle in hand, scanning the tree line for movement. For a while, it almost felt like life again. But cracks showed quickly. Food was rationed strictly. Anyone caught stealing was whipped in the square. A man who tried to leave was dragged back, beaten until he couldn't stand. Dalton ruled with an iron fist. Her word, law. One night, Lena pulled me aside. "This isn't a refuge, it's a dictatorship." I glanced at Zoe, asleep by the fire. "But she's safe here." Lena's eyes burned. Safe isn't the same as free. The breaking point came when Dalton discovered Zoe's immunity. Lena had been treating a boy bitten on patrol. He turned within minutes, but Zoe, standing nearby, didn't flinch. She didn't cough, didn't weaken. Dalton saw it. That night, Dalton summoned us. "The girl stays here, she's the future. With her, we can build something permanent." Tasha clutched Zoe, her voice trembling. "She's my daughter. You can't take her." Dalton's gaze was cold. "She belongs to all of us now." Eddie stepped forward, his crowbar gleaming, over my dead body. The standoff was brief but brutal. Guards raised rifles, survivors gathered, whispers spreading. Dalton's voice cut through the tension. "Choose, stay and obey, or leave and die." We looked at each other. Lena, Eddie, Tasha, me. The choice was no choice at all. That night, under cover of darkness, we fled. Eddie smashed the lock on the gate, Lena carrying Zoe, Tasha whispering prayers. We slipped into the forest, the cold air biting, the trees closing around us. Behind us, Haven's lanterns flickered, its walls looming. Ahead, only darkness. Zoe's small voice broke the silence. "They'll come after us." I tightened my grip on the rifle. Then we'll be ready. The Sierra Refuge had offered hope, but it had demanded too much in return. The state capital rose before us like a dying giant. Sacramento's skyline was shrouded in smoke, its streets glowing with fire. Helicopters circled overhead, their spotlights sweeping across chaos below. The air reeked of gasoline, ash, and blood. We had followed the river north, hoping for safety, but instead we found the end of California. Marcus was gone. Haven was behind us. The desert had nearly killed us. Now Sacramento loomed, its government buildings burning, its freeways clogged with wrecks. Soldiers and civilians clashed in the streets, their gunfire drowned out by the moans of the infected. Eddie gripped his crowbar, his knuckles white. This is it. The whole damn state's collapsing right here. Lena's eyes scanned the skyline. If the capital falls, there's nothing left. No command, no order, just chaos. Tasha clutched Zoe, her voice trembling. Then why are we here? I swallowed hard, because if there's any chance of survival, it's here. If the government's still standing, it's in Sacramento. But the government wasn't standing. We pushed into the city, weaving through burning cars and shattered glass. The Capitol dome loomed ahead, its white stone blackened with soot. Soldiers fired from barricades, their rifles cracking, but the infected poured through every breach. Civilians screamed, trampled, torn apart. We ducked into an alley, the roar of battle shaking the ground. Lena crouched beside me, her voice sharp. We can't fight this. We need to get Zoe out. Eddie shook his head. Out where? The whole state's gone. Then Zoe spoke, her small voice cutting through the chaos. We have to go to the Capitol. Tasha stared at her. Baby, no. But Zoe's eyes were clear, unblinking. That's where it ends. We followed her. The Capitol steps were a battlefield. Soldiers fell back, their lines collapsing. The infected surged, their moans deafening. Helicopters roared overhead, missiles streaking into the horde, explosions lighting the night. But for every body that fell, 10 more pressed forward. We fought our way up the steps. Eddie swung his crowbar, skulls cracking. Lena fired her pistol, her hands steady. I smashed with a hammer, blood spraying. Tasha shielded Zoe, dragging her through the carnage. At the top, the great doors of the Capitol stood open. Inside, the marble halls were littered with bodies, soldiers, civilians, politicians. The air stank of death. We stumbled into the rotunda, its dome cracked, sunlight streaming through. A handful of survivors huddled there, soldiers with empty rifles, aides clutching briefcases, a general barking orders no one followed. The general's eyes locked on Zoe, the child. She's the one. Lena's voice was sharp. How do you know? The general's face was grim. We've seen others. Carriers who don't turn. She's the only hope left. Tasha clutched Zoe tighter. She's not your experiment. She's my daughter. Before the argument could continue, the doors buckled. The infected poured in, their moans shaking the dome. The survivors screamed, firing wildly. The general drew his pistol, shouting, "Hold the line!" The line broke. The rotunda collapsed into chaos. Soldiers fell, their screams echoing. The infected swarmed, their claws tearing, their teeth snapping. Blood sprayed across the marble. Eddie roared, swinging his crowbar until it bent. Lena fired until her pistol clicked empty, then swung it like a club. I smashed with the hammer, my arms burning. Tasha dragged Zoe toward the stairs, her face streaked with tears. The general fell, his pistol clattering across the floor. The infected swarmed him, his screams cut short. We fought our way to the dome, the infected pressing closer. The marble cracked, the walls shook, the air filled with smoke and screams. Zoe stood in the center of the chaos, her eyes clear, her voice calm. It's not over. We can still live. Her words cut through the madness. For a moment, we believed. We dragged her up the stairs, bursting onto the roof. The city stretched below, burning, collapsing. The river glowed with fire, the skyline crumbled. The infected swarmed the streets, their moans rising into the night. Helicopters circled, their searchlights sweeping. One dipped low, a rope ladder dropping. Eddie shouted, "Go! Now!" We scrambled for the ladder, Zoe clutched tight. Eddie swung his crowbar, holding the horde back. Lena fired her last bullet, dropping the closest infected. I grabbed Zoe, hauling her up. Tasha screamed, reaching for Eddie. "Come with us!" But Eddie shook his head, his eyes burning. Somebody's got to hold the line. The infected swarmed him, their claws tearing. His roar echoed as the helicopter lifted, the city burning below. From the sky, Sacramento was a sea of fire and blood. The Capitol dome collapsed, the horde swarming over it. The city was gone, but Zoe was alive, and that meant hope still lived. From the helicopter, California looked like a funeral pyre. Sacramento was gone, its Capitol dome collapsed into ash. The freeways were rivers of fire, the suburbs graveyards of silence. Cities that once pulsed with life now smoldered, their lights extinguished forever. I held Zoe close as the rotors thundered above us. She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She simply stared at the horizon, her eyes clear, her face calm. She was the only constant in a world unraveling. Lena sat beside me, her hands shaking, her eyes hollow. Tasha whispered prayers, clutching Zoe's hand. Eddie was gone. Marcus was gone. Too many were gone. The pilot shouted over the roar, "We're heading east! Nevada's still holding, for now!" For now. The words echoed in my chest. California was burning, consumed by the dead and the living alike. But beyond the mountains, beyond the desert, there were still whispers of survival. Nevada, Oregon, maybe more. The state was lost, but the story wasn't over, because Zoe was alive. And as long as she breathed, there was still hope.